What is your we should never meet our hero story? I was dying to meet Jason Momoa, and I finally got the chance to at an after party for a indie movie he was in. It was at a small venue in LA with some bands playing. Jason walked in, and few people started talking to him. Once they passed, I bought a beer and approached him. I gave him the beer, and asked how his night was. He was kinda drunk already from the look of it, but he pounded the beer without saying anything. I wasn't too sure what to think, so I got more to the point, and asked if it would be cool to get a pic. He leaned into my face and said, "Tonight isn't about that. Tonight is about me," and walked away. Not even 5 minutes later he was taking pics with some other people across the venue, and signing some autographs. Aquaman owes me a beer, damn it. John Stockton told me I shouldn't eat so much bread when I met him when I was a little kid. The opposite story. I was boarding a flight to Los Angeles. Him in the line boarding the plane, when I notice one of the passengers in the line has stopped to say hi to someone in first class. Apparently the lifelong friends. Just blown away that they both randomly ended up on this flight together. Fine. Whatever, let's move the line along please. Then another passenger stops, equally delighted to see the same guy. And then a third passenger, same story. What the hell? How many lifelong friends all randomly ended up on the same goddamned plane? And then I finally reach the guy, and I realize, it's Henry Winkler, the Fonz. I immediately react, as if I've just randomly bumped into a lifelong friend on an airplane. I tell him how incredible his performance was in Click. His scene saying goodbye to Adam Sandler makes me cry every damn time, which is very rare for an Adam Sandler movie. He laughs and sincerely thanks me for the compliment as if I'm not the 100th guy today to tell him how awesome he is. I'd met a lot of celebrities by this point in my life, and it's always disappointing. But this was the first time I'd actually had more respect for a celebrity after meeting them than it had when I was just a fan. It's a cross-country flight, so the whole time, I'm thinking of how to get to spend more time with Henry Winkler when the plane lands, and at least get a picture or something. When we finally get to LAX, I get off the plane and start looking around. I check the shops, the bathroom, everywhere, but has gone. Oh well. At least we'll always have. And then I see him. There's an older Asian woman standing off to the side just looking awestruck and afraid to approach him. Henry Winkler sees this and actually approaches her, introducing himself. And then he says something I'll never forget. "I don't have to be anywhere for a while. Mind if I sit here and talk with you?" The smile on that elderly woman's face. I'll never forget it. I met one of the artists from ZZ Top at a super nice hotel in Louisville. Wasn't a big deal to me, but was to my cousin. My cousin asked, "I'm sorry to bother you, but may I get an autograph? I'm a really big fan." The one Zed replied, "Sure thing. Let me run up to my room really quickly and get the rest of the guys." We watched him go up to the room and waited for a little over an hour. My cousin cried. FCK that Zed in particular. Edit. To those questioning whether or not it was really him, I can assure you it was. This Zed in particular had a long pointy beard and we actually saw him and the whole Zed gang many more times afterwards. When I was in 2nd grade, I thought Bob Feller pitcher from the Indians back in the day was the greatest thing ever. I read about him constantly. When Cleveland opened its new Jacobs Field Stadium, he was there signing autographs all day. I went to the exhibition game with my dad. Around 10 PM we were walking to our car in the lot, and my dad notices Bob Feller is like 10 feet away walking with some guy. He's like, "Do you want to ask him for an autograph?" So I go over there, this tiny little white-haired blonde girl, and I was like, "Excuse me, Mr. Feller, can I have your autograph?" He turns to me and is like, "God damn it, no. I've been signing autographs all day. I'm not signing another one. Jesus Christ." I didn't know what to do, so I just kinda froze and walked back to my dad and teared up. My dad was so sad because he knew he was my hero, so he took the paper from me and was like, "Mr. Feller, would you reconsider? She reads about you every night. You're her hero." He was like, "Give me the goddamn paper." Signed his name real quick, and my dad thanked him so much and walked back to me to give it to me. He was like, "Here honey." Loud enough for Feller to hear, which was an accident lol. I was like, I don't want it anymore. After telling that story here and there, I found out apparently he is a huge dick and has a reputation for being constantly nasty. Oh well. One of my earliest memories was meeting Batman. I was probably 3 or 4, and I remember my mom taking me to this big event, and it was crazy and awesome. The Batmobile was there, and we got to sit in it. I remember I had a picture of Batman and Robin signed. Best day ever. I'm 30 now and recently brought it up to my mom. I asked where it was we went that time. She explained to me that it was just a local grocery store promotion. Batman and Robin were just some old fat middle-aged guys with a beat-up old Corvette that had cardboard mods attached to it. Apparently it was a pretty embarrassing display. I always remembered how amazing that day was, but now that I know the truth, it kinda ruined it. Not my heroes by any means, but by far the biggest assholes I've met in the music industry were Puddle of Mud. They couldn't even play their own songs during sound check without ducking up, and they would fire any crew that looked them in the eyes. Also Chris Daughtery, I was his runner and asked for an autograph for my aunt who is a huge fan, and he just laughed at me. Wasn't really my hero, but I met Billy Mays a while back when he was visiting a local Giant Eagle grocery store for some reason or another. I think they had the money for him to come in and plug some product in store. Anyway, my mom worked at this particular Giant Eagle and she met him before I came into work. She had him sign an autograph for me before begging him to do her a favor. That favor was charging in my direction down an aisle shouting, "Clean your room, Mangiaco." Funny and a great memory thinking back on it, but I nearly shat my pants at the time. Clean your room, Mangiaco turns to a live studio camera with oxyclean. Played blackjack with Michael Phelps, who was a drunken sloppy mess and an asshole. Also, Pete Rose, who was funny and awesome. Edit. Phelps was at the Harrah's Casino in New Orleans during Super Bowl weekend, and Rose was on a random Vegas trip at the Palms 6 to 7 years ago. While I was working at an airport, I met Sting. I thought he was gonna be cool, but he was kind of a dick. The opposite can be true also. I met Robbie Williams of Take That, who I'd always thought seemed kind of a dick, but he was one of the nicest people I've ever met. In fairness, you were working at an airport. People who have to be at an airport are generally in a bad mood to start with. Also, you have to take these things with a grain of salt. I generally try to assume that people who are assholes to me are having a bad day. Doesn't make it okay, but well, we've all had bad days. This one is a little different. Louis C.K. did a show at a theater I was working at once. After the show, I was chucking some bags of garbage into a dumpster in the alleyway and he came out to get some fresh air. I noticed it was him, but tried to play it cool and just nodded and painfully tried not to acknowledge him, since he was probably trying to have some quiet time to himself. So I just keep focusing on what I'm doing, taking out the trash. But then a bag ripped open on me mid-swing and scattered shit everywhere. He piped up and said, "Well, that's a bummer," then headed back inside after giving me a good luck nod and a brief moment of sympathetic eye contact. I really do know he meant the bag ripping open, but it felt like letting a parent down at the time. Don't meet your heroes, not because they're all assholes, but because you will probably only let them down. Edit. My top comment is now about me disappointing Louis the 100th. K. Hi mom. I met Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at an airport. I asked to take a picture and at first he seemed really unhappy about it. I asked what he was reading, and it was a Sherlock Holmes novel. I love those, so we chatted about it some, and then he mentioned he had written one about Holmes' brother. I felt like I was really bothering him, so I'd keep trying to leave him alone. But every time I started to leave, he'd ask a question, so we kept chatting. Just a really quiet dude, I guess. Was nice after the picture though. The hell I don't. Listen, kid, I've been hearing that crap ever since I was at UCLA. I'm out there busting my buns every night. Tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up and down the court for 48 minutes. I was at a Captain America premiere. Chris Evans signed as many autographs as he could. Scarlett Johansson signed a lot too. Samuel L. Jackson walked towards us and people start screaming his name. He just looks at us and imitates the people screaming, laughs and goes in the theater. I wasn't even mad. Quite a few years back my dad took my brother and I up to San Francisco for a day trip to Pier 39. Turns out Jeremy Bulloch, the original Boba Fett, was doing some kind of meetup thing that no one turned up for, except for us. My dad is a huge Star Wars nerd after having grown up in its heyday, so naturally he was a bit nervous meeting his hero. From memory, the encounter went pretty well, but I'll always remember the moment it got awkward. You were always my favorite character, man. Even if you only got like 10 minutes of screen time, I'm sure I had a bit more than that.
Ed.
I was a huge Pistons fan growing up, and my family had season tickets. For season ticket holders you get these sick privileges like being able to go to the tunnel sometimes after games, pre-game meet and greets, whatever. Anyway, one day, some of the bad boys were in the arena, the back-to-back champions. Total Detroit legends. I worship them. Isaiah Thomas especially. Keep in mind this was in the second wave of Pistons greatness in the mid-2000s, so to have both iterations of great Pistons teams was unthinkable to me. Anyway, I'm in the tunnel. I got a sheet load of autographs on this hat that I don't think I have anymore. Ben Wallace, Rip Hamilton, what have you. Then, an older guy starts walking down, and people are going kinda nuts. It's one of the bad boys. I definitely recognize his face, but I really could only know Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. So I go, who is that? And this older teenage kid, in retrospect he was like 12, goes, oh, that's Joe Dumars. So I go, Mr. Dumars. Mr. Dumars, can I please have an autograph? Being polite was procedure. If you weren't polite they wouldn't give you anything, and the guy turns to me, looks me dead in the eyes, and in front of everyone, in my mind like 400 people, in all likelihood it was about 60, and goes, bitch, I'm Rick Mahorn. And then the 12-year-old goes, Mr. Mahorn, may I have an autograph? Which Rick Mahorn grants him. To the day I got an autograph from every single bad boy, except Rick Mahorn. Edit. I was asked if I was such a big fan, why didn't I recognize Rick Mahorn? I didn't see them play. So I was a fan of the bad boys in what they represented, an era of Detroit sports dominance. Also I was like, Sev. I met Buzz Aldrin working on a promo for Axe body spray when they did that Apollo go into space contest thing. He was insanely nice. But listening to him talking to his assistants and the Axe people as well as the director of the promo between takes, he seemed a bit disconnected from his words. I have no idea what his schedule was like or what else he was going on, but being the main audio guy I had a clear feel of everything he was saying. And it all just sounded mildly confused. Still, got to shake hands with a guy who's been on the freaking moon, so, you know, that was really freaking awesome. I was a huge fan of Ryan Cabrera through college. His voice is mediocre at best, and his melodies are simple but catchy. Despite this, I really identified with his lyrics when going through a really bad breakup that spun me off into destructive behavior during the second half of college. Always came back to his music and it eventually got me out. Fast forward to 2016, and Ryan's out on tour. I was able to see him perform live for the first time in my life, and got the opportunity to meet him after the show. I had rehearsed what I was going to say about how his music kept me going through my darkest times. And he completely brushed me off to hit on my friends. Haven't listened to his music since. On the opposite, ran into Stephen King while hiking with my dad in Maine. Really nice guy. Invited us to lunch, got autographs, etc. TL. Dr. Stephen King is a weird dude, but one of the nicest weird dudes I've ever met. Edit. Just to clarify a couple of things. I'm not the douche who hit Stephen King with a van. This was in 2007, so he spent a majority of the time a bit giddy, asking us if we had seen The Mist. The diner he took us to for lunch, every person in there knew him, but didn't draw attention to him. After we finished up lunch, we headed over to a little bookstore, where I bought a copy of Jerusalem's Lot, and got him to sign it. We shook hands, told me I had good taste, and we parted ways. All in all, meet your heroes, because they could be Bill Nye's, but they also could be Stephen King's. And yes, I know my original post wasn't long enough for a TL drive. 5 people didn't have to repeat it. Edit 2. My highest rated comment is a pleasant story about meeting my favorite author. I'm okay with this. When I was still in high school, my best friend, his older sister, and I met Adrian Peterson, future Hall of Fame running back for the Minnesota Vikings. And it sucked. We all happened to be walking into a mall in the suburbs of Minneapolis at the same time, and he was walking right in front of us. My buddy and I got all excited, and I made eye contact with him, so I knew that he knew we recognized him. But before we could say hey Mr. Peterson, big fans, he held the door open for my friend's sister, checked out her ass, and whistled at her, then closed the door right in my friend and his faces. Didn't even want to say anything to him after that. This was 6 to 7 years ago now, and I'm still salty about it. On the other hand, I met Bo Burnham after a show in Iowa City, Iowa one time, and he was great. Was willing to chat with any/all fans that came to the show, genuinely thanked everyone for being there, and signed my ticket, and took a photo with me for free. This was on his Bo Burnham Live tour, and I've made a point to see him on both of his tours since then, and will gladly pay to see him on any potential future tours as well.